Good morning, everyone. We're going to get started. It's good to see everyone. Welcome to New York Law School. Welcome. I'm Anthony Crowell, the Dean and President here, as well as the Faculty Director of the Center for New York City and State Law. And we are so honored to host today's special briefing on the work of the Adams administration with First Deputy Mayor Randy Mastro. Welcome, Randy. Today's program is special both for our founding director, Ross Sandler, who's the Samuel Seabury Professor of Law, and myself, because Randy has been part of our lives for many years, supporting the center and in helping to support this law school, as well as mentoring not only me and many others of us in the room. Our entire community is grateful for his support, and I know Ross, who is here this morning, we know he founded the Center for New York City Law, now New York City and State Law, 31 years ago. And Randy was, from the very beginning, a stalwart supporter of that, an advisory board member, and could always be relied on for sound advice and counsel, and really helped give us the lift early on to help build a program that is enduring. So Randy, thank you for that. You made a lot of this possible with your wisdom, and we appreciate that. I know that for myself, I started in city government 28 years ago as an assistant corporation counsel. When I worked in the legal counsel division, I was detailed to work at several charter revision commissions, including Claude Millman is here, including one at which Claude Millman was the executive director, and I was an assistant counsel. Then I was the general counsel at the 2001 Charter Revision Commission. And I think we all learned so much from Randy about government and policy, law and management. And for me, I took a lot of those wonderful lessons with me when I was hired at the beginning of the Bloomberg administration, where I served as counselor to the mayor. So Randy has taught many of us great lessons. I'm really pleased he's joined us today and that he will engage in a very substantive discussion with the center's own Ben Max, who serves as executive editor and program director. And as you know, he is the host of the Max Politics podcast. And I certainly want to thank many of the other members of the center who are here this morning. And I want to give a quick shout out to our board vice chair, Ross Moskowitz, who's here. Thank you, Ross, for all your support and your civic leadership for so many decades. All right, without any further ado, I'll invite Ben and Randy up to the stage.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here today. Thank you, Dean Crowell, for the introductory remarks. Really pleased to see this great turnout for this conversation. And thank you for being here, First Deputy Mayor Randy Mastro. And I'll just echo the Dean's remarks about Professor Sandler. Thank you, as always, for your work leading this center and all the great work it's done. Yeah. Stay tuned, everybody, because we are working on the 200th City Law Breakfast coming soon. So we're working on that. You'll get an invitation to that, and Professor Sandler will be hosting that soon. Welcome.
Pleasure to be here. And so many friends, so many people who touched my life, and I like to think touched theirs. So many friendships, so many people committed to good government in our city. So for me, it's an honor to come back and be with so many old friends who've done so much for our city. So thank all of you too.
6 months in as first deputy mayor, how's it going?
Well, it was going really great, Ben. Amazing results. When I agreed to take on this role, it was a little bit like deja vu all over again, because I basically did this job 30 years ago. I've stayed active in civic life through my pro bono work, through all those lawsuits I brought against the city and the state over the years, service on various boards and commissions, like Citizens Union, where you were such a valued part of what we did to promote good government, the Gotham Gazette, and I think it's fair to say, Ross, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, because you actually go back longer than I do. I think I am the first person in modern city history to serve in the position of basically the first deputy mayor, the acting mayor, in the mayor's absence, going back 60, 65 years. 250, okay. And mayors of different political parties. I've always approached good government as a nonpartisan activity. As Fiero LaGuardia said, there's no Republican or Democrat way to clean the streets and pick up the garbage. It's about getting positive things done for the public. So to have that opportunity at this stage of my career, to be able to come back and help the city, it was something, I had to do, despite the advice of my wife and daughter, who said it was a very inconvenient time for me to take this pay cut. But the fact of the matter is, the fact of the matter is that I always approach this as something I would be doing for 9 months. If it turned out to be longer than that, that would be an additional blessing, but it's just a blessing to be back.
Mhm.
And I say this every time I'm asked a question like that, Ben. Every day is precious. I treat every day like it's a gift. I see my chief of staff here, Valerie, Anne Marie also on my staff, Makuse running a wonderful new pro bono legal services office in the mayor's office that we created. We're making every day count. And you will see day after day, we announce important new initiatives, and that's going to continue for the next 3 months, because we're going to make every day count between now and then. And if we leave a better city than we inherited, if this team contributed to something greater than existed before I came back to City Hall 6 months ago, that's why we're there.
Mhm. So what you say there strikes me, because on two fronts, I think it's almost indisputable that the city's in better shape than when Mayor Adams took office on a variety of fronts. At the same time, he's going to leave office where trust in city government is probably lower than when he came into office. How do you square that? The mayor obviously just announced he's not running for reelection. It was already a long shot situation given his poll numbers, approval numbers, et cetera. But there's clearly a divide between his approval numbers out there, however much stock you want to put into those, and some of the policy accomplishments of the administration. Clearly, some of that gap can be explained by the fact he was the first sitting mayor to be indicted and a variety of investigations and people he appointed. But your perspective on that divide, clearly he's advanced a number of policies and programs to benefit New Yorkers overall. There's a lot of people pleased with his approach to housing, trash containerization, literacy education, schools. I could go down the list.
You're just starting, but
right,
I
exactly.
finish it. Right.
So how did you come in and think about rebuilding trust in government or the functioning of government? You came in right after several deputy mayors had departed, again, related to the mayor's legal situation and the president getting those charges dismissed. So say a little bit about that gap. Policy accomplishments, but seemingly decreased trust. Did you come in and try to boost morale in City Hall? Did you have to clean house in any way? What were some of the approaches you took saying, I've got perhaps 9 months in this role and I need to try to both advance policy accomplishments and sort of increase the functioning of government and trust in government?
I thought this was going to be
Or
a
correct me.
softball interview. I'm just kidding. The short answer is, um, I came into City Hall to try not simply to stabilize situation, but to make progress. I actually came in at a worse moment that Ben. I came in when the mayor was still facing
Mhm.
those charges. And had just had a group of deputy mayors who had left. So I knew the challenge was going to be something that I was prepared to take on, but that, would be, from some people's perspective, daunting. Of course, I tried to restore morale in City Hall. In my early days, I went to the bullpen unannounced. We have this giant bullpen in City Hall. Those of you who don't know, it was established by Bloomberg to be like a trading floor, and all the staff sit in this bullpen. I think it's remarkable how they get any work done, all having to sit in the same space. But anyway, that was really too daunting a task to dismantle that bullpen. And I went to the bullpen and I talked about what I hoped to achieve over the next 9 months for this administration and this mayor. And it is remarkable how the team has come together and how much we have achieved over that period of time. There is a disconnect. I think it's an understandable disconnect, in the sense that, as the mayor has said, he learned on the job. He made some mistakes, trusted some people he shouldn't have trusted. But today, and over the past calendar year, he's had a remarkably professional team that is doing a great job for the people in New York City. We've got professional police department under a great commissioner. We've got a city hall that is operating on all cylinders with a professional team of deputy mayors. I'm very proud to be a part of that team. Now, let me talk about Eric Adams, because he is a special person. Unlike some folks out there who've served before, he acknowledges that he learned on the job and he made some mistakes and he trusted some people he shouldn't have trusted. But at the same time, he has delivered in remarkable ways for the city of New York. Crime is down, major categories, record levels when it comes to shootings and murders. Jobs in the local economy are up, jobs to record levels in city history. Affordable housing, that's supposedly the big issue, okay? Being produced at record levels in this administration in 4 years compared to the prior 20 years under 2 other mayors. And affordable housing at a remarkable rate. This administration will have produced a 6-figure sum, created a 6-figure sum of affordable housing, and overall 426,000 units of housing, more than half of it affordable housing, through shovels in the ground creation and rezonings that will change the city landscape in every neighborhood over the next decade. It's a remarkable record of achievement. So when I say history will be kind about the achievements of this administration, I don't think there's any question about it. I can't take credit for all of that. I've only been here for 6 months, but I will. But we have, we're now talking about legacy. And I think, yes, when one looks back at the legacy of the administration, There will be those aspects of it earlier on that, you know, the mayor owns and accepts responsibility for. But by the same token, what he's achieved as a mayor, coming in with the twin crises of COVID, where a local economy had collapsed and no one was going to the office, and then almost immediately hit with an immigration crisis and an influx, turned out to be over 235,000 migrants coming to our city, but literally being shipped in by Texas. And how he handled that, how his administration handled that. You know, I always say that this is a mayor with a head and a heart, maybe sometimes too big a heart, okay? But now that migrant crisis has been addressed and we only have 35,000 migrants still needing any public assistance in housing. We have seen the local economy having collapsed and no one in the office, and huge job losses as a result of COVID, to now the highest levels of jobs in New York City history. He did something right. He's doing something right. And it was more than frustrating to me that didn't translate into more appreciation by the public at large about those achievements. But, as they say in politics, the voters are always right.
Mm.
So, we are where we are, and the mayor made a very personal decision. I would say he made sacrifice because he saw an existential crisis coming for the city, and his continued candidacy only contributed to that potential existential crisis becoming more likely a reality. So he made that decision. He made that decision for the good of the city. And I respect and admire it.
Did you have advice for him in that decision-making process? Was that something you urged him to do, or were you not part of his decision-making process?
There's been a separation of church and state.
Mhm.
So I have had the honor of helping him run the government on a day-to-day basis. Was not involved in the campaign, so I was not involved in that campaign advice, but I understand it and I respect the decision he made.
And so you reference an existential crisis potentially coming to the city. I infer that you're talking about a mayor, Zohran Mamdani. Is that your view of his potentially being the successor to this administration would be an existential crisis for the city?
Yes.
Please explain.
I thought you'd appreciate my brevity for once. Okay. We are not a socialist city. Okay? We are the business capital of the world. We're an international capital of the world where we welcome every foreign leader. We don't talk about arresting them when they come to our city. Right? I think that the notion that we become a socialist city, Democrats, socialists, we had a mayor that was the product of the Working Families Party and the Democrat socialists. Didn't work out very well. This candidate is even more of a true believer, who says some things that shock me, that with a smile and a great social media campaign, he'd be one of the most divisive mayors in city history. We have to go after the top 1%. We have to go after the business community. We have certain strong views about certain international issues that divide this city, where we have the largest Jewish population of any city in the world. And then we have free everything when he can't deliver on those free things at all. Many of them are at a state level. He's only had one job in his life, and that was to be a state legislator, and he never got any of those things done. You can't have free buses.
Little time at one or two jobs before that, but yes,
Whatever,
very
whatever,
limited experience.
Whatever.
Yeah.
I I don't think it's a resume that cries out to be, mayor of New York City, which has regularly been called the second toughest job in America. And right now, it may be the toughest job in America because of who has the #1 job. And we as a city face an existential crisis because there's the potential of electing a socialist mayor, and there is a very fragile and fraught relationship with the federal administration, and threats coming from the federal administration about what will happen to New York City if we have a socialist mayor. So I worry about those things. Yes, so I think it's an existential crisis.
Many things you just said that I'd like to ask you a little bit more about, but let's stick with that final point. What is the best way, in your view, to have a mayor and a city administration manage a Trump presidency? We've seen different styles, whether it actually is from the mayor's office or from the governor's office. We've seen different relationships. Mayor de Blasio, you were referencing, had his approach, which was seemingly mostly an antagonistic approach. You had Governor Cuomo had his approach at the time. Now you have Governor Hochul has her approach. She's gotten a lot of praise for how she's handled the Trump relationship, sort of managing that with less of a heavy hand, but she seems to have sort of shifted some of her rhetoric on that lately. You've had Mayor Adams, obviously a very complicated relationship, to put it simply, and perhaps too simply there. But the city is taking a number of legal actions against the federal administration to try to stop some of these cuts. The mayor, of course, not criticizing the president publicly at the same time. It's complicated. But what's the best way for any mayor, in your view, to manage a Trump presidency and, as you said, the threats coming from Washington to the city?
I think that in government, you have to have relationships with your federal and state partners to serve the city best. Sometimes that means you have to take on your partners when their actions are hurting the city. But what it doesn't mean is that you're always antagonistic or you are always supportive. A lot of things the Trump administration is doing have caused us as a city and the mayor and this administration to go to court, to bring lawsuits, or to join lawsuits in an amicus capacity. I think we have now appeared in 24 lawsuits against the Trump administration, either as a party or having intervened or joined in an amicus capacity to support other litigants against the Trump administration, including on immigration issues and teenagers snatched off the courthouse steps when they were simply trying to appear at an immigration hearing. I don't know that there's another mayor in the country who has participated in as many lawsuits against the Trump administration. But by the same token, so we're standing up to the Trump administration to protect the city's interests. But by the same token, having kept certain lines of communication open, is the president. The mayor had issues with President Biden as well. And yet he had lines of communication open with that administration because that can benefit the city. So you have had the ability to go to the White House or the federal administration to get relief from certain policies that adversely affected cities around the country. For example, Brooklyn Marine Terminal project, a great transformative project that we worked really hard to get passed with federal and state partners and finally got it passed last week. But there's an essential element of that. There is a wind farm off the coast of Brooklyn, that a multi-billion-dollar project, huge number of jobs that would be the energy for that project, right? And suddenly there was a ban nationally on all
The
on all
president
wind.
hates wind farms.
Okay,
Yes.
on all, but because we kept lines of communication open. The mayor and the governor were able to convince the president to lift the ban on that project, which was essential to the Brooklyn Marine Terminal project, transformative to that section of Brooklyn going forward. That's just one example. You don't see the National Guard here. You don't see some of the worst effects of the Trump administration happening here because there have been lines of communication kept open. Now, you mentioned the complexity of the relationship. We can come back to that. But the fact of the matter is, if you looked objectively at how we have conducted ourselves, we've probably taken on the Trump administration more than any other city, and this mayor has taken on the Trump administration more than any other mayor in the country. But at the same time, because he has treated with respect, both at the Albany level and at the federal level, the executives, we have managed to produce more for our city than a lot of other blue cities.
Does his not using this immense bully pulpit of being mayor of New York City more forcefully on some of these issues matter in your view? Would him saying we don't want ICE agents snatching people from the courthouse who are just there for their immigration proceedings, would that make any better difference, you think, or would that actually hurt the cause?
But he has said that, okay? And he has said that repeatedly. Part of it is, how the message gets out there, right? And because he is not a constant antagonist, when he has spoken out against what's going on at the federal level, it hasn't necessarily gotten the same attention. But the fact of the matter is he's spoken out very forcefully and issued statement after statement. And we've now appeared in case after case that ICE wants to arrest criminals, transnational gang members who make our city less safe. We're going to support that. But ICE wants to snatch kids and break up families on the courthouse steps who are showing up for immigration hearings to establish their legal rights to stay here. No, that's wrong. That's not what we stand for as a city. And he's been very clear on that. And I think, he's really stood up as a beacon. What other mayor is going in on case after case to stand side by side with those folks in an amicus capacity and say, let them out? And we've had some success.
Coming back to this being now a 3-month sprint, would you say?
I've been sprinting
through the?
I've been sprinting the whole time.
Okay.
I'm
So,
like I'm
last
ready
leg.
I'm ready for the senior Olympics. Okay.
What are the top 2 or 3 priorities for the final? Are there top priorities for advancing legislation that hasn't been passed yet? Are there new programs to be launched, or is it more a 3-month process of cementing what's in place, advancing projects, trying to make sure a next mayor can't undo certain things? What are the top priorities for these few months?
It's a combination. Some initiatives that have been launched, but need to come to full fruition, particularly with the prospect of a socialist mayor who's not as supportive of law enforcement. But let me go through some of those priorities. In terms of public safety and quality of life, the mayor has been working very actively with the police commissioner. We have 1,500 cops dedicated to quality of life crimes and improving quality of life in our city. Perception has to catch up with reality. Major crime is down in virtually every category, in murder and shootings to historic lows. But perception hasn't necessarily caught up to reality. And part of that is quality of life. A distressed homeless population out on the streets that's incapable of helping themselves because of mental illness or addiction problems. The mayor has spoken very forcefully about that. And we have teams who work on those issues.
That was our last event here. For those who might have been here, we had a briefing on those folks doing that work.
And we intend to accelerate that work. Quality of life also goes to street and park cleanliness, cleanliness of open lots, getting rid of encampment housing outside. We have an enormous shelter system where we have a legal obligation to provide housing for the homeless. Nobody should be living out on the streets. And I think you're going to see some reforms in that area continuing to improve quality of life and help more distressed homeless get off the streets into the supportive housing and services they need, because addiction problems are such a major part of that. I think you're going to see more medical and social work component to that work. Quality of life is also about some of the daily assaults we face, like out of control e-bikes on the bike lanes. And that's why couldn't wait for the city council to act any longer with legislative proposals that have been pending forever. So by regulation, we imposed a 15-mile-an-hour speed limit. By regulation, we have imposed a series of requirements for identification of the delivery worker e-bike drivers, so that there can be proper enforcement by police and a specially created new unit at DOT to make sure that laws are being complied with. And we're also cracking down on those uncertified ion batteries in too many of the bikes that implode into deadly fires. So this whole set of regulations to make e-bikes safer, we got City Bike, Uber to reset the speedometers so they can't go more than 15 miles an hour. And on the
That's Lyft on the city bike.
I'm sorry,
So-
Lyft. I'm sorry, Lyft.
Mhm.
Uber's the other one.
Yes.
You know,
Different trouble with
right.
Uber, no.
we got them to reset the speedometers at 15 miles an hour so that we have, those using the e-bikes can't go more than 50 miles an hour. So I think you're going to see a major improvement there. And we invested more double shifts on park cleaning, and we invested more in sanitation cleaning. So I think you're going to see cleaner parks and streets. These are three major components of quality of life. And I think over these months, you're going to see that improvement even more, so that New Yorkers will feel as safe as they are today. I didn't, and I don't want to dominate the conversation, but there are other things that we have on the agenda right now that I hope will happen. It's time to end the horse carriage industry. It's kind of a silent scandal in our city that we've allowed this animal abuse for too long. And it's become a public safety issue too, with horses out of control. One dropped dead in recent months. 3 of them broke free, gallivanting, causing public safety issue where passengers were literally thrown from the carriages as the horses broke free. And the Central Park Conservancy, where the horses have been allowed to continue to function, has come out and said, please end the industry. Central Park, 42 million people a year in Central Park. It's too crowded. The carriages cause damage to the roadway. The carriages create a public safety issue in crowded parks. We live in one of the most congested cities in the world, right? It's time to meet the moment. And this mayor has met the moment. He came out. The other mayoral candidates, have joined in that chorus. So whoever the next mayor is going to support getting rid of the horse carriage industry. That's why we should do it now.
Do you think this is something that will pass in the next 3
Well, I
months?
think it's up to the speaker,
Mhm.
right? And hopefully she will meet the moment and have the courage and common sense to realize that now is the time. A bill has been pending in the city council for over a year with 20 council members signed on to co-sponsor the bill. That means you're only 6 votes away. And I think that privately, council members would tell you they'd vote for this overwhelmingly if it came up for a vote.
Mhm.
And again, we have a mayor who has a head and a heart. he's not just talking about ending the industry. He has offered to the union, which purports TWU, which purports to represent the drivers, but they actually have no collective bargaining agreement, apparently no benefits, no nothing. Really, TWU is representing the industry and trying to preserve the industry. The mayor has said people who have, the owners who have licenses, we'll buy them back at market rates. Or if you'd rather continue in the industry with electric carriages, we'll arrange for you to get electric carriages. Those of you who are drivers, we will get all of you jobs in the city. Maybe that's electric carriages. Maybe that's other jobs in the city at better wages with all the benefits that you don't have now. We will establish an electric carriage industry if that makes sense.
So what's the rub here? What's the holdup?
For whatever reason, the union has been intransigent, won't even negotiate about a transition. I wanted to add one more thing.
Oh,
we have
please.
even offered to create a stable and a kind of
Pasture?
pasture.
Yes.
Good word.
Thank you.
I was going to say petting zoo, but that doesn't do it justice. Okay, for some of the horses and for kids and families to commune with them, some of the workers could work there. It could be a wonderful thing for our city to do this, and I just hope it will happen in the next 3 months. Because it's something we could all be proud of.
You're making a very strong case about it, but I think one question that comes back from people is this really somewhere to put a lot of political capital and a lot of focus and effort in a final 3 months of an administration?
I think, when you're doing the right thing, it's always worth expending the political capital. This shouldn't be an issue about politics. This is really an issue about right and wrong, and now it's an issue about public safety. So it's an issue that came up in the past 2 weeks. Some very vile rhetoric being used by the union. I don't engage in that kind of rhetoric myself, but the time has come to do this, and it's time for our public officials to meet the moment. So I hope the speaker will see the wisdom of doing it now, because the next mayor is going to do it too. And the next speaker is going to do it. So she can go out on the high of having done the right thing, or she can leave it to the next speaker to do the right thing.
Speaking of the two sides of City Hall, one thing that strikes me that could potentially be an area that there needs to be some agreement on is to do something about the law related to the closure of Rikers Island. Everybody acknowledges the city's not going to meet the legal deadline. There were COVID delays. There have been other reasons that things are behind schedule. The city is supposed to have those jails closed within the next 2 years. That's not going to happen. The other jails are not going to be ready. Does that need a legal, does the law need to be adjusted? Should it be adjusted by the end of this year? Is there any live discussion around that? And if not, what's the path forward to making sure the city is in compliance with its own laws?
Well, it won't be adjusted by the end of this year because this speaker and this council won't adjust it. But there are commitments, but then there are realities. You pointed out some of the reasons why the plan isn't working. There are some more fundamental, which is that it's a plan where over 7,000 inmates are on Rikers, but only about 4,000 plus beds are going to be created by the borough-based jails. So what happens to the other 3,000 people in an age of bail reform, meaning no bail? So there's a revolving door in and out of the system where you have discovery rules that have been reformed in the last session, but where people were getting let out too easily. You have a system where already there's a concern about recidivist offenders getting out on the street. You're not creating enough beds to deal with it. And you're also not dealing with a fundamental issue that the mayor has raised, which is that over 50% of people at Rikers have mental illness problems. And none of those borough-based jails does anything about that. The mayor has proposed that at least one of those borough-based jails be dedicated to also providing services for those who are mentally ill. So there need to be adjustments. There need to be more beds, and there needs to be a recognition that too many, if we want to help get people through the system and back out on the streets, they need mental illness treatment too, in addition to whatever deterrent effect the current system has.
The Office of Pro Bono Legal Services that you mentioned with Executive Director in attendance here, that was one of your,
Please stand up, Makuse.
this was one of your signature ideas and achievements. Is that fair to say?
I'd like to think of it as a long list, but yes, I'm very proud that we did this. I'm very proud that we created the
I said
mayor's.
one of.
Okay,
I said
thank you,
one
thank
of.
you. Yes, the mayor's office to combat anti-Semitism,
Mhm.
another example, and then you're going to be hearing about another new mayor's office in the very near future. But this office is particularly important, and Makuse particularly well qualified to launch it because she played such a pivotal role in our asylum seekers program. And she was counsel there in helping thousands and thousands and thousands of immigrants who came to our city apply for asylum and get the legal rights that they needed and get legal counsel, some of it paid for by the city. You know, she's taking those skills, having matched lawyers with potential clients, to a broader concept that includes the immigrant community, to create a database of lawyers and law firms and legal service organizations and law schools and clinics, and put these resources together so that New Yorkers in need of pro bono assistance, including our immigrant community, can call there and be matched with lawyers. It's not the city paying for the lawyers, but it's having a database of pro bono counsel and what they specialize in to match them up with those in need. Obviously, you have certain large organizations like, you know, Legal Aid Society, but the Legal Aid Society doesn't do everything. I was vice chair of the board of the Legal Aid Society for a long time. They do certain things really well, but their resources are not unlimited. They do certain types of things. Then you have other legal service organizations that you know, specialize in particular areas of the law, and you have a lot of law firms that would devote hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of hours to pro bono legal services, wanting to specialize in certain types of law. So the database that Makuse is putting together is one where New Yorkers can call in and get matched to lawyers, legal organizations that could potentially represent them pro bono. Also an important role, I have to say, in helping immigrants find legal counsel, and there are resources devoted to that, right? In the budget we just passed in June, unanimously adopted budget, that hasn't happened in many years. So I'm very proud of that and to have worked with the city council to produce a unanimous budget that the mayor called the best budget ever, and that the city council speaker called as close to perfect as she's experienced in her time. We included $120 million for legal services for immigrants to be able to access. So this new office also is helping in referrals in that regard. And I'll just finish with this. You asked earlier about, you know, next mayor, what it is to be mayor and all that. The front-running candidate put out, you know, a tweet recently about his policy initiative, you know, that he would, you know, devote $100 million to legal services for immigrants. He would provide that. That means he's going to cut them by 20%. Means he doesn't know what's in the city budget. Means he doesn't understand what we are already doing to help our immigrant community. That's a pretty big deal when you put that out as a major policy initiative, as if it's an achievement, when it would amount to a 20% cut in the money we're already providing for immigrants for legal services. But go ahead.
I don't know that tweet. You're sure he wasn't saying additional?
I don't think he was saying additional.
I do know he wants to, he said he wants to hire something like 200 more attorneys for the law department. I assume that's one of his proposals that you might support.
I would. I would. As some of you know, the only job I aspired to do was to be corporation counsel, and I would have been calling for the 200. So,
Right.
you know, here's the important part about, you know, political discourse in our city. Most of us have more points of agreement than we have points of disagreement. And I always root for our city. So please don't misunderstand why I think it's an existential crisis to have a socialist mayor. I think the orientation is just so different in general. But are there points of agreement? Things that, you know, we can come together on? Of course there will be. And our law department needs to improve tremendously. It's had lots of cuts over many years, and it needs more lawyers. You know, that's one of the frustrations of only being able to be here for 9 months. You can't get everything done you'd like to get done. But yes, on that point, I agree wholeheartedly. The law department could use 200 more lawyers. It used to have 1,000, and now it's down to closer to 700.
Let me ask you something that ties in a few things you just said. This most recent city budget, mayor's best budget ever, city council unanimously approves. A lot of kumbaya at City Hall over this one. But part of that was because the mayor was restoring a lot of funding that he had previously reduced. One of the critiques of his tenure has been over-empowering his budget director, his budget office, being too conservative in some of his budgeting and unnecessarily cutting some programs that created a lot of PR headaches for him. He wants to cut library service. He wants to cut early education. As an expert on how city government runs, what should that look like in terms of the relationship between the mayor, the budget director, and that approach to city budgeting? And how did it go in your negotiations over this last budget?
Well, it apparently went very well. You know, well, I'm not conservative, okay? No matter what the city council thought when I was up for corporation council. I happen to be a lifelong Democrat. I consider myself to be politically progressive. Progressive in the sense of making progress, not progressive in the sense of, you know, burning down the house when you don't like the other side. And, you know, I'm very proud of the budget we produced. In fairness, you had the crisis of COVID. You had the crisis of the influx of hundreds of thousands of migrants who needed social services, costing the city billions of dollars. So you had, you know, budget gaps to deal with those twin crises that no mayor before this had to face. I think, you know, the closest analogies in terms of the hole blown in the budget were the dismal state the city was in the early 90s, when it was near bankruptcy, and Time magazine was, you know, calling us the rotting apple. And that just happens to be the time I came to City Hall the last time. But
that's
so it's understandable why there is a more conservative approach to the budget, but also why so many of the mayor's priorities, because I think he had a lot more in common with the city council than people realized. Just the funding wasn't there because it had to be used for services to restore the city after COVID and to deal with the multi-billion-dollar hole blown in the budget by the migrant crisis. So we were finally at a point where the local economy had come back, jobs had come back, and the migrant crisis was no longer a crisis, and where we could close the intake center at the Roosevelt Hotel. So this was actually the first budget that could reflect the mayor's priorities. I'm not going to blame that on the budget, OMB. The reality was that the city faced these issues. I came at a time when we fortunately had the ability to fund a lot of the mayor's priorities, like universal after school and restoring funds for parks and sanitation and libraries, baselining culturals and adding more to their budget after cuts for year after year after year, hiring 3,400 more cops, hiring 3,700 more teachers. It was a great budget, but it reflected shared priorities that the mayor had the responsibility as mayor of balancing the budget and couldn't fund in the first 3 years of his administration, but he could in the last year, and that's why it passed unanimously in the city council.
Last couple of questions from me, and then we'll take a couple of audience questions before we part ways this morning. One, as you got at, we both said, one of the mayor's biggest legacy items will be an approach to housing, increasing housing supply. There are proposals on the ballot to shift the city charter in the direction of speeding up some of housing production. There's been pushback from the city council because there are elements of these proposals that limit city council involvement in some of negotiations around housing, somewhat similar to the City of Yes changes to zoning in the city that create either in these proposals a faster track towards approval, in City of Yes more as of right development. Is the administration, can't lobby for the passage, but is the administration going to have a robust education effort to help make sure that sort of the side of the proposals being smartly thought out and proposed is in front of New Yorkers heading into Election Day?
Having chaired two mayoral charter commissions myself, with Anthony Crowell and Claude Millman and others in this room, involved, the charter commission itself will be involved in a public education campaign. The mayor has already made clear that he supports those initiatives. I think everybody agrees we have to do more about housing and affordable housing. The changes that the Charter Revision Commission has suggested are sensible, to expedite the process for smaller projects, to have a process where if the mayor and the council are loggerheads, a borough president can be involved in breaking the logjam. We all say we want to do more about affordable housing. Well, let's do it. This mayor has done it in practice. We have passed not only City of Yes, but two major borough rezoning plans that will increase affordable housing production tremendously in Manhattan and Atlantic Avenue in Brooklyn. We've got two more coming down the pike. Those two happened on my watch since I've been back in City Hall. The other two will be later this year in Jamaica, Queens, and Long Island City. Long Island City being the biggest neighborhood rezoning in city history. I think they will both happen. A second phase of Hudson Yards redevelopment, which will produce thousands of units of housing, including hundreds of units of affordable housing. That's going to happen. What a great thing, instead of leaving a derelict open rail yard next to the beautiful Hudson Yards development of phase one. That got through the city council. So we're making tremendous strides, but these charter changes, making permanent ways to produce more affordable housing, I think that will be a real plus. And we should be, I just want to say this, because you're right, the city council is overreacting. We share a common goal. We're all trying to get there, the common purpose. I wish we had more civility and decorum in our social discourse, our political discourse. You know, I always believed in reaching across the aisle. I've met with most members of the city council and established relationships with them, even though when I was up for corp council, I was not embraced by the city council because we all have to work together. So throwing around, you know, certain rhetoric, like some of the rhetoric I heard from the council side last week about a relatively modest issue that involved housing, that will get resolved in a way that produces a lot more housing. You know, I think that we'd all be better off. Our city would be better off if we had more civility and mutual respect in our political discourse. And I hope that whatever happens in the mayoral race, because also the city council seats will be up and there will be a new speaker January 1. I hope what comes out of it is shared values, shared commitment to do right by New Yorkers. And even when you have political differences, you know, to recognize that you can have differences, but you can still have civility and mutual respect and find areas of common purpose for the good of the city.
You're referencing there some controversy over a project in the Bronx. Won't go into all the details there. You also came in and undid the Elizabeth Street Garden Haven Green project that reversed the mayor's longstanding support for that project. I hear you saying there already, movement on these will create more housing in the long run in deals you've negotiated.
Not saying that that's a reality. 5 times the affordable housing because the local council member wouldn't support any rezonings. 1 block away, exactly the same number of adult senior housing. But now those adult senior, you know, seniors can go to Elizabeth Street Garden. It was a win-win for everyone. And some of the rhetoric that came out of it was shocking because it showed a fundamental lack of understanding of how government can actually find solutions that are win-wins. The community around that garden, they cherished and loved that garden, all right? And I worked with the local councilman to find 3 other sites the local councilman had actually opposed rezonings, okay? And he committed to support those rezonings so that we could create over 5 times the affordable housing, including exactly the same amount of adult senior housing, a block away with a private developer who could have just developed without it. He didn't need to do that, but he wanted to help the community, so he agreed to delay his as-of-right project to create the same number of adult units.
But
There should
quickly,
have been, everyone should have been saying, wow, that's a win-win for everybody. But unfortunately, some people got so caught up in the symbol of Elizabeth Street Garden that they lost sight of the bigger picture. I have common sense. The mayor has common sense. And we look for solutions that produce even more for the community. And that was a win-win. But anyway, go ahead.
Not to spend more time on that.
Sorry. But you brought it up.
Well, no, but that will take.
And I heard somebody groan when Elizabeth Street Garden.
That will take, no, not yet. That will take a lot longer for that housing to be produced. This has been an ongoing legal battle. This is, there's more to the conversation, but I want to be wary of time. Last question for you. You mentioned more that you agree on than disagree on, your warnings about a potential Mayor Mamdani, but also, you know, if that is the case, wanting to find points of agreement, wanting to be helpful. Will whoever the next mayor winds up being, will you be managing a transition? How are you thinking about running that process?
Yes, we will be managing, you know, a transition. We've already, you know, been preparing for the next 3 months, and we will manage a transition. And we want to hand off the best city possible to the new mayor. And again, I always root for the success of the city. So we want the next mayor to be successful, whether there's ideological differences or not. So yes, the point of returning to City Hall was to be able to help the city and to be able to, whatever happened in the future, leave the city better off than it was before. And hopefully the next mayor will take it, whoever that may be.
Mhm,
And now we have three choices.
mhm.
But help put the city in the best position to succeed and thrive in the future.
Well, thank you for taking all my questions. Professor Sandler's off to teach, and we're going to take a couple of audience questions. Let's just take the three people standing here. Go ahead, sir.
Yes.
Michael?
Deputy
Hi,
Mayor-
Michael. Nice to
Deputy
see you.
Mayor, thank you. I'm Michael Myers, President, New York Civil Rights Coalition. I have to say, Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, I'm shocked because I heard a smear job towards the Democratic Party's candidate for mayor. Smear job.
I was not
Just- let
intending
me-
a
let
smear
me ask
job,
my- let
Michael,
me ask-
but I
let me ask my-
respect your
let me-
opinion.
Let me ask my question,
Sure, go ahead.
okay? The Democratic Party's nominee identifies himself as a Democrat socialist. I remember other people in the civil rights movement identified themselves as Democrat socialists, including Bob Rustin. And Martin Luther King was attacked and harangued as a communist, not just a socialist, but as a communist. He wasn't a communist, but people wanted to believe that. So my question to you is, given that the Democratic Party selected their nominee to be the Democratic Party candidate for mayor, what is so difficult for the Democratic Party officials to recognize and respect the choice of the people?
Okay, great. So Michael, and you know how much I respect you. In my office, above the fireplace, I keep a giant portrait, a photograph taken by my father-in-law, who was a photojournalist who covered the civil rights movement in the 60s. I keep Martin Luther King's photograph to remind me every day of the principles he stood for, that we should be continuing to embrace and advance today. I'm sorry, we just see it differently. Zoran Mandami is no Martin Luther King. And I don't think that because the party nominates someone, that means all of us Democrats have to line up and say, oh, that was the nominee of the party. Only through ranked choice voting did he get above 50%. Didn't get 50% in the first round of voting. And there's another Democrat who's going to be on the ballot. And while he's running as an independent, and Mom Donnie would still be on the ballot on another party line had he not won the Democratic primary. So I'm going to vote for a Democrat. I'm going to vote for Andrew Cuomo. And we can disagree about which Democrat we like better, but I respect your decision, and I hope you will respect mine.
Yeah, Chris Bastian, resident of Brooklyn. Mayor Adams was the second mayor to promise a vision for the Brooklyn-Queens Expressway, which is both a vital transportation link and is suffering from overcongestion and crumbling infrastructure. Other than some emergency repair work, the vision never was forthcoming. There was supposed to be an environmental review this year that never happened. So do we have to wait for a third mayor to come up with a vision to deal with an ongoing problem?
So I really appreciate that you asked that question because it's also related to the Brooklyn Marine Terminal project. When you asked about top priorities, the BQE is a top priority. And we got the state to approve of us going forward with an environmental review to be able to overhaul the BQE, it's got to be done. And now we are waiting for approval from the Trump administration, FHWA, to start that process. That decision will be made by November. So you asked me about one of my priorities. You know, one of those priorities is to start the environmental review to fix a major problem in our city, the BQE. It's in need of, you know, an infrastructure overhaul. And I believe we will get it done. It's an example of keeping lines of communication open. And hopefully we will have that approval in November. I will be profoundly disappointed if we don't get that go ahead. I'd hoped we'd have had it already. We did get the states okay by May, but we didn't get the feds. I hope we'll have the feds by November, and we will be setting on a path something that is vitally important to our city's infrastructure. So thank you for raising that.
Michelle D. Winfield. Hello. The New York State Clean Air Act was amended 2022. It stated no smoking near doorways 100 feet. I can't find any signs reflecting that in New York City. 100 feet. You still got time.
Okay. All right. I'm going to add that to my 3-month list. Thank you.
Last one here.
Hello, good morning. Usman Mohammed from the Castellanos Law Firm. Hypothetical, assuming you had 4 more years as first deputy mayor, what would be some of your initiatives or policy agenda that you would like to achieve in that 4 years?
Okay. I really appreciate that question.
Get some more coffee.
Yeah,
We got.
No. I'll keep it short because, you
This is
know,
a big question. That's all I was.
I love this job. That's why I came back to do it again. And while I, you know, only expected it to be for 9 months, you know, I wish we had longer. I wish this mayor had longer. And to be crystal clear, you know, well, yeah, he's decided not to continue his campaign. Of course, I would have been voting for him if he continued his campaign, because I think that, you know, he has done a great job. The policy achievements are there. What would be the big picture agenda? Obviously, what I described about quality of life, some of those things require legislative changes, right? We have legal and statutory restrictions on what can be done to help the mentally ill and addicted homeless get the help they need, even when they can't help themselves. It's not humane to leave them out on the streets. And unfortunately, too much has developed in the law that, you know, leaves them out on the streets or puts them back out on the streets very quickly. We need legislation from Albany to change that. We have transformative infrastructure projects like Brooklyn Marine Terminal, like Fifth Avenue of the future, and others that I'd love to see happen, but those are 2 major ones. How great it will be for Brooklyn to have state-of-the-art port, thousands of units of housing, including thousands of affordable units, and dozens of acres of parkland. I'm in an area now that just, you know, is not as developed as it should be. That's a wonderful thing. Fifth Avenue of the future, our own Champs-Élysées. Okay, now the people from Paris can come here. You know, those would be wonderful things I'd like to see. And always, all right, you want to see a fairer, affordable city that is safe, that gives economic opportunity and affordability to families, and that provides public education that you know, continues to improve outcomes for our children. And that includes, you know, helping charter schools as an alternative. And we've made progress. Didn't talk about this before, but reading and test scores up in public schools in every grade and every, category. That's an amazing thing, but it's not enough because our kids are our future. So we've set a path for affordability, for better education, for a safer city, for fairness and equity and opportunity in every community of the city to have the quality of life that working class families deserve. Boy, I wish we had the chance to continue that and do it on steroids in the second term.
Thank you.
First Deputy Mayor Randy Mastro. Thank you.